Well, all of you know the world has changed. Social media is playing such a huge role in our lives today. So we're going to talk about that this week with one of the people in this region who's done a lot with his company. Trigger Strategies works with a lot of clients to help them understand how to use social media. Larry Anderson is the principal of that company. Larry, welcome. Now, you just finished a study talking to a lot of CEOs. Tell us about that.
We interviewed over 100 CEOs between January and March of this year. And primarily, it wasn't a scientific study. It was primarily about what's working, what's not, what struggles are they having, what successes are they having. And then we even talked to some people that weren't using it yet and why they weren't.
Mm-hmm. So what was, out of all that work, what did you discover? How was it working for people?
We found I think we talked to almost 120 businesses that about 80% of them were using it in some form. But a vast majority of them were just simply having a page or two, but not really knowing what to do with it. Mm. So they were very sporadic. They weren't sure whether they were getting anything out of it. But then there was a small segment, maybe 10 to 15%, that were actually seeing tangible results. Mm-hmm. And the reason was because they had dedicated staff, they had a strategy, they had a budget, and they were there consistently. Mm-hmm. And the difference between them and the group that were sporadically using it was vastly greater. And also the groups that weren't using it, we were seeing them starting to fall a little bit farther behind in business. They were out of the loop on a lot of things. Their customers didn't have as much access to them. So it was something that every one of them we spoke to said we need to look at it. But there's still about 20% that weren't doing anything yet.
I find, and I'm sure you find, that there are many businesses, particularly small businesses in the region, that don't even use any social media. What are they losing if they don't use it?
Well, number one, if you're not in the conversation, you don't know what's being said about you, and you can't react. We see it all time and time again, even small companies, that people will go on there and they'll say, who does this and who does that, and they'll start recommending, and you're not there to listen and be part of that conversation. The other thing is, so your customers are there. Whether or not you enjoy social media, we had one person we spoke to that said, Facebook's a waste of time. And I said, I'm not here to sell you on Facebook, but do you think your customers use it? And he goes, oh, yeah, I never thought of it that way. My customers do use it. So it's where your customers are. It's not necessarily if you enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. And I think of companies that I've talked to, they have no clue that I could be sitting here condemning their company.
Yeah. We've seen it a few times where a customer's had a really bad experience. There was a furniture store, for example, that promised a delivery of a product, and they didn't deliver on their promise, and the person went online and talked about it. This person happened to have thousands of people that he was connected with. Well, within an hour, he had over 100 comments and discussions about this company. And 3 specific people said, well, I'm not going to buy there now. Mm-hmm. So you can see just that one conversation cost that company thousands of dollars worth of business.
Mm-hmm. I also know of companies who tinker with social media. They say, I'm going to set up LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Foursquare, yeah, all these different things. They set it up and then they don't do anything with it.
We saw a lot of companies where their last tweet was in 2010. Their last Facebook post was in October 2011. And we asked them why that was, and they said, well, we just don't have the time. Mm-hmm. Well, there's no such thing as time management, there's priority management. So if it's important, you'll make the time for it. And we found the companies that were using it and getting good results is they simply just made the time. They made it a priority, and they were seeing tangible results.
Larry, what does this mean for traditional media?
Traditional media, in our opinion, is not dying. It's just its effectiveness is changing. So radio is still a valid tool. Print can still be valid. It's just, unfortunately, taking more dollars to see it be as effective as it used to be. Mm-hmm. So now what we're suggesting to businesses is augment your traditional media with social media as well as with some direct media. And that combination of the 3 more than likely will give you a better result than just using traditional.
Do we still talk in today's terms about having a presence in different locations around the region so that when people think of something, they think of my company or your company?
That is still important, but at the same time, with how connected everyone is, it's really important that you're in the conversation. So Neil and I, my partner Neil Thornton and I did the study. We have a saying that if you're not online, you're out of mind. So you have to be online, and that could be your website, could be email, could be social media, or a combination thereof. And that's what we're finding, that of the companies we spoke with, they were online, and it was a big part of their business.
And do they tend to have dedicated staff?
Yes. Now, one thing we want to caution everybody about is don't dedicate this to your intern. Mm-hmm. We found some firms that hired an intern and said, here, social media. Interns are great and they're valuable resources to have, but they don't necessarily have the understanding of your business or the connection to your customers or to your strategy that you do. Mm-hmm. So this is something that needs to be handled from a senior point of view, and the intern can help launch some of those messages once you've dictated what they are.
And of all social media that we're aware of, what's the most important one today?
It really depends on your audience. That's another unique thing we found, is why Facebook is the biggest. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the best for your business depending on who your audience is. For example, Neil and I, the best tool we found is Twitter. We've landed 2 of our biggest clients directly through Twitter. And LinkedIn is also a great tool for us. Facebook, however, for another business we spoke with, a kitchen company in St. Catharines, Facebook is their biggest tool because they can show photos and videos of their products. So it really goes back to, just like with traditional media, do your customers listen to the radio? What do they read? It's the same with social media. Which tool do you think would best align with them?
I guess I'm a lot surprised that there are a lot of companies not using any social media today.
The biggest reason of the people we spoke with is because they don't know how to measure it. Mm-hmm. And it came back to, I don't know what I'll get for my money. So we said to them, well, you have to put in objectives just like you would with a print ad or radio, or if you're sending out your sales department. What do you want to have happen? And that's where they got stumbled. They said, we don't even know where to start. So typically you start with getting people to connect with you. That's number one. Getting likes or follows or whatever the terminology is based on the platform you're using. Then from there, it's engagement. How many people are actually sharing your content, liking your content, having dialogue with you? And then from there, you can start to earn the right to sell. Social media, it's about connecting first and then selling versus just promoting your offering.
And some people would suggest that even with social media, you might not want to sell features and benefits. You provide information, expertise.
Information, expertise, and the experience. Let others tell your story is a great way to use social media. We found that when you do a great job and you're providing a great service, people will start to talk about you. Well, that's just the way it happens in the world anyway. Mm-hmm. If you provide. We've also said that if you're a bad business or you have a bad product, social media will just accelerate that. Mm-hmm. So focus on your business first, and then use social media as a way to engage with your market.
Isn't that interesting? Because some people would think if I use social media, it will fix all my problems.
It will just accelerate your demise. That's what it will do.
So now your company has done some interesting studies. What have you learned about business in general in the region? Are we really aware of what's going on, or are we still lacking in a lot of fundamentals?
We've met a lot of great business owners in St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, Fort Erie, but we find that a lot of business owners in Niagara are slow to make decisions. Mm-hmm. And I think most of that is fear-based. They're just unsure of what to do. But waiting isn't really a growth strategy. So our advice is you don't have to jump in with both feet, but get started and make a commitment to it, and then stick with it, and you will see results.
Very good. Larry, thanks very much for coming. We'll have you back again.
Thank you, Jim.
This is important stuff. So what are you doing with social media? Do you know people who are running their own companies? They may be great selling something, but if they're not using social media, they're a bit out of step. I'm glad you to watch. I'll see you next week. And it's about 7 days. Have a great week.